Single dad CEO ordered a girlfriend for the party, but his daughter said, "Can she stay?" At first glance, Alexander Hart looked like a man who had everything: power, wealth, respect. He was the CEO of one of the largest real estate companies in New York. To the world, he was untouchable. But behind the mansion walls, there was silence. No laughter, no warmth, only the sound of his 7-year-old daughter, Lily, playing alone in her room. And that night, when Alexander picked up the phone and made a call he never thought he would make, ordering a woman to pose as his girlfriend for an important business party, he had no idea that decision would change his life forever. Because when the night ended, it wasn't Alexander asking her to stay, it was Lily. Act 1. The lonely CEO. Alexander wasn't always this cold. Years ago, he was deeply in love with his wife, Emily. They had dreams, laughter, and plans for the future. But tragedy came early. Emily passed away shortly after Lily was born, leaving Alexander a widower at just 30. He buried himself in work, determined to build an empire so his daughter would never know struggle. But what Lily lacked wasn't money, it was affection. Alexander tried, in his own way, but he didn't know how to braid hair, read bedtime stories with silly voices, or dance in the living room. He gave her gifts, but what she needed was presence. And no matter how hard he worked, he couldn't escape the guilt of failing her. Now, with a crucial investors gala approaching, Alexander faced another problem. He couldn't show up alone again. The board whispered about his inability to connect, to look complete. They said a man without family support wasn't stable enough to run the company. Desperate to silence the rumors, Alexander made a decision. He hired an escort service, not for intimacy, but for companionship. He needed someone polished, someone who could smile at his side, someone to play a part. Act 2. Enter Clara. That's how Clara Evans entered his life. She was nothing like what Alexander expected. Instead of being flashy or rehearsed, she was simple, graceful, and kind. When they met, she laughed nervously and admitted, "I've never done this kind of thing before, but I needed the money." And they said, "You just wanted a date to look presentable." Alexander studied her. She wasn't trying to impress, she was simply real. At the gala, Clara did more than stand by his side. She engaged with people, disarmed them with warmth, and even made Alexander laugh, something he hadn't done in years. Investors admired how human he looked with her. For the first time, Alexander realized how lonely he had been. But the real moment happened after the party. When they walked into his house, Lily peeked from behind the staircase. She usually ignored Alexander's business associates, but something about Clara drew her in. Clara knelt to Lily's level, smiled, and said, "Hi there, I love your stuffed bunny. What's her name?" Lily's eyes lit up. "Her name is Star. Do you want to meet her friends too?" It was the first time Alexander had seen his daughter invite someone into her little world. He froze as Lily tugged Clara's hand and whispered the words that would haunt him later. "Can she stay?" Act 3. Walls begin to fall. Clara didn't plan on staying. She had her own life, a struggling artist with debts to pay and a small apartment, barely holding together. This was supposed to be one night, one job, but Lily clung to her with such innocence that Clara agreed to stay for dinner. The next few days, something extraordinary began to happen. Clara taught Alexander how to braid Lily's hair. She painted with Lily on the terrace, leaving little splashes of color on the gray mansion walls. She reminded Alexander that his daughter didn't need perfection, she needed him. For the first time, the mansion felt like a home. But Alexander struggled internally. He wasn't supposed to feel this way. Clara wasn't part of his world. And deep down he feared he didn't deserve happiness again. Act 4. The conflict. One evening, Alexander's business rival discovered Clara's past, that she had been hired as a companion. At a board meeting, he humiliated Alexander in front of the investors, sneering, "Your perfect girlfriend. She's on payroll, just like your employees." The room turned against Alexander. Whispers returned. His credibility shattered. Clara, ashamed, left the mansion without a word. She believed she had ruined everything for him. That night, Lily cried herself to sleep, clutching her stuffed bunny. She asked her father, "Why does everyone leave us, Daddy?" The words broke Alexander. For years he had told himself his empire was for Lily, but now he realized it had cost him the very thing Emily would have wanted for Lily to grow up with: love, not loneliness. Act 5. Redemption. The next morning, Alexander made a choice. He walked into the boardroom, stood tall, and declared, "Yes, Clara came into my life in an unexpected way. But what matters is not where she came from, but who she is. She brought joy back into my daughter's life, and into mine. If you can't respect that, then maybe I don't need your approval to be the man I want to be." The room fell silent. For once, Alexander didn't sound like a CEO. He sounded like a father. Then, with Lily by his side, he went to Clara's small apartment. He knocked on the door, holding a single rose. Clara opened it, eyes swollen from crying. Before Alexander could speak, Lily rushed forward, wrapping her arms around Clara. "Please don't go. Can you stay with us forever?" Clara looked at Alexander, her voice trembling. "Why me? You could have anyone." Alexander shook his head. "Because you're the first person who made us feel like a family again." Epilogue. A new beginning. Clara moved in not as an employee, not as a guest, but as someone who belonged. The mansion, once silent, now echoed with laughter. Clara and Lily painted a mural in the backyard. Alexander finally learned how to make pancakes, burning half of them but laughing through it. And as years passed, what began as a transaction became something deeper. Second chance at love, at family, at life. Message: sometimes what we think we need is success, power, or perfection. But life has a way of reminding us that the most priceless treasures come disguised in laughter, in kindness, in the little hands of a child saying, "Can she stay?" Because true wealth isn't measured in empires built, but in love shared.